Thursday Night Football is back, and today we got a divisional matchup as the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Cleveland to take on the Browns. The Browns, 4.5-point favorites. The over-under, 38.5. Today, I got my favorite player prop, spread pick, and the same-game parlay for you guys. We've been pretty dialed in on spreads this year, hitting them at a 71% clip. Let's keep that roll going. If you're new to the Call on Our Shot channel, my name's Austin. If you want to do me a favor, go down below, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 40,000 subscribers. Also, drop a like, too. We certainly would appreciate it. Let's dive into my favorite player prop. And speaking of player props, this video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. If you want to sign up for Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use code COS or the link in the description. You get a 100% deposit match. I'll have an underdog play at the end of this video. Let's hop into my favorite player prop, though. We're going with the guy that the people call a man of the people because his name is Donovan Peoples-Jones. And we're taking his over 28.5 receiving yards. We're putting one unit on this. This is minus 109 on Caesars. I'd play this up to about 32.5, which is the line on Underdog. I'll give you a hint. We'll be taking that too. Now, the wide receiver for the Browns, Donovan Peoples-Jones, has had an interesting start to his year. And I'm going to address the elephant in the room because, yes, Donovan Peoples-Jones had as many receiving yards as you and I and everyone else watching this video because he had 0 receptions for 0 receiving yards in week 2. And, like week 1, Donovan Peoples-Jones had 11 targets, 6 receptions, and 60 yards. So what was the problem? Because he was on the field for 83% of the snaps in week 1, 78% of the snaps in week 2. So the question is, what happened? Why wasn't he targeted last week? And you got to look at the coverage that he was facing. The Jets played 70% zone coverage, not Donovan Peoples-Jones' strength. And that was the strength of Amari Cooper. And even when they switched to man coverage, the Jets put their best corner, Sauce Gardner, their first overall pick in the draft, they put him on Donovan Peoples-Jones. So obviously it wasn't a great matchup for him. But you look at zone coverage, benefited Amari Cooper, and that's the guy that went off. He had 9 receptions, 101 yards. But in week 3, they're going to face the Steelers, who play 40% zone coverage. So they're going to set a lot more man, and that is Donovan Peoples-Jones' strength. And I expect to bounce back here. You don't normally have a guy that's starting on the team go 0 receptions in back-to-back weeks. You look at, a couple weeks ago, week 1, Devontae Smith, similar comparison. 0 receptions in week 1. They made it a point to get him the ball in week 2. Hopefully we see a similar thing in this game. Now, the Steelers' defense is going to be keyed in on a couple things. Number 1, stopping the run. You got to stop Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You don't stop the run, then probably won't have a chance to cash this bet. But I think they will load up and stop the run and see a lot of play action. Number 2, probably going to be focused on stopping Amari Cooper. Obviously, Cooper just had a big week last week. Probably the Steelers are going to watch a lot of film and see, all right, we got to stop this guy. But you look at the Browns, they have high praise for Donovan Peoples-Jones. You look at their Browns wide receiver coach, passing game coordinator, Chad O'Shea. He's had the following to say. He said, about Donovan Peoples-Jones, he has the ability to make contested, difficult catches against man coverage because of his size and catch skills. If you look at his week 1 catches, he was making a ton of contested catches. Last year he was 5th in the NFL in contested catches, and against a man coverage team, they're going to need guys to go up and make some plays. You look at his other lines, his receptions line, sitting at 2.5, which is plus money, a little bit, I think plus 100 on the over, maybe a couple other books like plus 110. But in his last 15 games since the start of his career where he's had 2 or more receptions, he's hit this over in 13 of those 15 games. And if you look at 2+ receptions on DraftKings, that's minus 360. Donovan Peoples-Jones averages 17.8 yards per catch in his career. All it takes is 2. It could even take 1 catch. Just the guy that has the ability to take the top off the defense. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is due a pretty big week. Taking his over 28.5 receiving yards is my favorite player prop of this game. I'll talk about a couple more props at the end of the video. But let's transition into my spread pick, because when you look at this game, it's a Thursday night. They started us off with, Bills-Rams the first Thursday. We had Chargers-Chiefs last Thursday, and now they're hitting us with the Steelers-Browns. Not exactly what we wanted to see, but let's talk about the Steelers. We faded them in week 1, profitable, or we tailed them in week 1, profitable. We faded them in week 2, profitable. So only way right, we tested again. And I asked the followers on Twitter, if you're not following us, make sure you follow us at Call on a Shot. 67% of you guys like the Steelers, and I was afraid of that because I don't want to do this to you guys. But I like the Browns. I'm taking them minus 3.5, which is minus 120 on BetMGM. Now, before you go down below, say, Austin, I only have 4.5. I understand that's a spread on a lot of books, but I'm going to buy the extra point because in my head, this feels like a 21-17 Browns victory, and it would not surprise me at all by that score because 1, that would land on the hook for the spread, and 2, that will land on the hook for the total. These books are dialed in, and the fact that a 21-17 win for the Browns would still make people lose the minus 4.5. That's why I bought that extra point down to minus 3.5. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to take the 4.5, you might as well go up to 6.5 because I don't see a lot of games finishing with the 5 and 6 point total. It feels like, you might as well take a team to win by a touchdown at that rate. But let's look at this because we're looking at, immediately looking at the line, you see a low over under at 38.5. You're seeing the team getting 4.5 points. only makes 100% sense to take the team getting the points. I mean, why wouldn't you take it? That's a low over-under. They should cover in most senses, and that's what I'm afraid of. I feel like a lot of people are going to be on the Steelers today, but I like the Browns. Let me talk about why. Now, the Browns, after week 2, after their complete choke against the New York Jets, well, they held a players-only meeting for the defensive players. That's very unusual for after week 2 to hold a players-only meeting. That rarely ever happens in the NFL in general, yet the fact they did it after week 2 is really weird. So I think they bounce back here, and everyone's going to be betting on the Steelers just because they've owned the Browns over the last 20-plus years. But this is a much different Steelers team. Doesn't have Ben Roethlisberger, relying on Mitch Trubisky and company to get it done. And the Browns have won, quietly, 4 straight Thursday night games, 2 of those under head coach Kevin Stefanski. Browns have won 6 straight Thursday night home games, while on the other side, the Steelers lost 7 of their last 8 road Thursday games. And while they could lose this and still cover the 3.5 that I'm taking, I do think the Browns get it done at home in this one. They just have to. After last week's absolute collapse, where all they needed to do was recover an onside kick to cover, I think they get it done. So I'm taking the Browns minus 3.5. You can take them at 4.5. Don't be surprised if it's 21-17. I haven't checked the odds for that exact score. If that hits, I might do a victory lap around the apartment. I don't know what I'll do. But either way, let's hop into the same game parlay. And we're taking advantage of FanDuel, which to have a risk-free or no sweat, as they're calling it, where you have to do 3 or more legs and it has to be plus 400 or better odds. So here's the 3 legs I came up with. Obviously, do whatever you guys feel comfortable with. Like Nick Chubb, anytime touchdown. Najee Harris, anytime touchdown. And an alt under 55.5 points. Plus 472 on FanDuel. So if it loses, we get back our money or in a risk-free kind of bet for FanDuel. Now let's talk about this, because you could go with the more risky alt point total. Obviously, the line is 38.5. I rose it up to 55.5 just to be pretty safe. Now, obviously, doing that does give you some pretty extra value, good value on it, because you're betting on 2 guys to score a touchdown, yet you're taking an under. So that normally correlates to a higher payout for these SGPs. But I look at Najee Harris. Had a touchdown in week 1. He had a touchdown in both games versus the Cleveland Browns last year. I mean, he's like, if they're going to get in close, there's really not anyone else they're going to hand the ball to. So I think Najee Harris could easily get into the end zone. He's like plus 140 as a separate play. And then Nick Chubb, coming off a 3-touchdown game, similar to Najee Harris. To get in close, they're going to give him the ball. So I think Nick Chubb has a chance to get in the end zone. I think the Browns have a chance to win this game. But that's not in the SGP. We're just taking these 3 legs. I think they get it done. Plus 472. Not a lot of alt receiving yard lines that I really like. So I'm going to avoid those. I like this SGP. Now let's move on to Underdog Fantasy. As a reminder, if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use code COS or the link in the description. 100% deposit match. Take advantage of it. These are the 3 legs I like. We're going Donovan Peoples-Jones over 32.5 receiving yards. Already talked about that one. Kareem Hunt over 9.5 rushing attempts. And Pat Freiermuth over 38.5 receiving yards. Now, this is, if you put $10 on it, you'll win 60. If you put $100, you'll win 600. The odds are plus 500 on these 3 legs. Now, I already talked about Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't need to talk about him more. If you need to hear why I like that leg, scroll fast, go backwards to the 2-minute mark in the video. But Kareem Hunt, you look at his leg, 11 and 13 carries so far this season. This is juiced on most books to almost minus 155 on DraftKings. They can get it done, especially if the Browns are leading. They don't want to run Nick Chubb into the ground, especially after he just had a big game on Sunday. Obviously, running backs, you don't want to keep loading it and loading more and more carries onto him, especially on a short week. Kareem Hunt probably used a little bit more than people think. And then you look at Pat Freiermuth. Been getting a ton of targets, 4 and 5 receptions in the last 2 games, 7 and 10 targets. Just has to break 1 catch. Maybe he does that in the flat and takes one up 20 yards, and that should be able to get him to that 38.5 yard line with a couple more receptions. He also hit this over in 1 of 2 games versus the Browns last season. So I'm riding with that, as that Underdog Fantasy parlay. Sign up using code COS or the link in the description. I would appreciate it. And also, if you ever want to sign up for other different books, use our dimers.com/COS link in the description, like FanDuel, BetMGM, Caesars, all those risk-free deposit matches, all that stuff. You can go check that out down below in the description. Everything should be there. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the Thursday night countdown. This video is going to be this game is going to be electric. I appreciate you guys always tuning in. Let's hit 40K subscribers. I'm Austin. I'm signing out. Go check out our week 3 best bets video right after this one. It's on the screen right now. I appreciate you guys as always. I'm Austin, and I'm signing out. Peace.